There we go. Sorry about that. I was trying to get all the stream and all the streams going. So where's the alphas? Woodpaw alpha. There's one. Got him. There's another alpha. Just trying to snipe this guy. Expect we're gonna pull a whole fuck ton. No? Huh. Nice. Apparently now for this quest leveling guy, I'm supposed to turn this shizzle in. Turn in Alpha Strike. Accept Woodpaw investigation. Aw, I thought I had a cool invite.
You wish to speak?
We going, we rolling. What's my wife up to?
How may I aid you? Be careful.
Heal ZF. Sure.
brings you here?
It sucks. Oh, well, that group fell apart. My bad. I got distracted. I forgot I was streaming. I got distracted by stupid world chat where people are just trolling, and I gotta get on the trolling. So we're at the quest. Turn in Alpha Strike, accept the next one, then go back to the Woodpaw Village. And from the Woodpaw battle map scroll on the crate, turn in investigation. gotta loot.
Welcome to the Maraudon in-depth dungeon guide for both Horde and Alliance. In this video I'll be documenting every quest, rare, boss strategy, and the respective loots, and how to enter each wing of the dungeon. The timestamps for each category will be available in the comments section found below, as well as a full dungeon run in the description. Maraudon is a system of caves found in the west corner of Desolace, and is the birthplace of the Centaur. There are two separate wings that Maraudon can be completed in, but if you opt to clear the whole dungeon, expect a nearly 2-hour run. There are quite a few powerful items found within, so don't let the length deter you, as this dungeon provides you with items you can carry until you upgrade them once you're level 60. Furthermore, nearly every quest can be found in Desolace, and none have prerequisites, so Maraudon is an excellent place to grind out a level in a fairly short duration. The recommended levels for this dungeon are 47 to 52, but you can enter as early as level 35. As for the recommended composition, make sure your group is ranged heavy, as many of the mobs and some of the bosses do massive amounts of area of effect damage, making the dungeon exponentially more difficult if you're with a group primarily composed of melee. Any combination of ranged, a tank, and a healer will make do. Do not be dissuaded if you're a melee damage dealer, just be prepared for the difficulties that lie ahead. Our first of 3 Alliance quests is Corruption of Earth and Seed from Keeper Mirandus in Nigel's Point. This quest simply requires us to kill Theridris, who is the last boss of Maraudon, and rewards one of 3 powerful weapons. Our next quest, Vile Tongue Corruption from Talandria, who is also found in Nigel's Point, sends us inside the entrance area to fill a file from any of the water pools found near the orange entrance. Once we've filled the file, we can head inside and look for the corrupted flowers found anywhere within. On using the new file, you will purify the flower, but spawn 2 to 3 corrupted elementals, which will reward completion credit. Our final Alliance quest can be found in the Mage Tower of Theramore. From Archmage Turvosh, we can pick up Shadow Shard fragments. This quest requires us to collect 10 Shadow Shard fragments from End of Earth and Seed from Salandra dungeon. Our first of 3 Horde quests is Corruption of Earth and Seed from Salandra near Shadowprey Village. This quest simply requires us to kill Theridris, who is the last boss of Maraudon, and rewards one of 3 powerful weapons. Our next quest, Vile Tongue Corruption from Vark Battlescar, who is found in Shadowprey Village, sends us inside the entrance area to fill a file from any of the water pools found near the orange entrance. Once we've filled the file, we can head inside and look for corrupted flowers found anywhere within. Upon using the new file, you will purify the flower, but spawn 2 to 3 corrupted elementals, which will reward completion credit. Our final Horde quest can be found in the Valley of Spirits of Orgrimmar. From Uthelnay, we can pick up Shadow Shard fragments. This quest requires us to collect 10 Shadow Shard fragments from any of the elementals found within the dungeon entrance. Our first neutral quest begins in the north-central part of Desolace. At Cormac's Hut, we can pick up Twisted Evils from Willow. For this quest, we are required to collect 15 Therigic crystal carvings found off of virtually every mob within the dungeon. Our lengthiest quest comes from the Centaur Pariah patrolling the southern part of Desolace. From him, we collect the Pariah's instructions. To complete this quest, we'll first need to kill the Nameless Prophet found at the entrance of Maraudon. From him, we'll receive the Amulet of Spirits, which we'll need to collect the remainder of the items. Utilize the amulet on the first con, found here, to collect the first gem. Repeat for the second con, found here, the third con, found here, the fourth con, found here, and finally the fifth con, found here. Once all gems are collected, use them to craft the Amulet of Union. Our second to last quest starts in the entrance area of Maraudon. From Kavindra, we can pick up Legends of Maraudon. This quest rewards more than 10,000 experience, as well as granting you the ability to teleport halfway into the dungeon. Gavinger requires you to collect the Celebrian Diamond from Lord Viletongue and the Celebrian Rod from Noxian. Upon killing our fourth boss, Celebrus, he will be reborn, enabling you to turn in the quest and then giving you the follow-up, the Scepter of Celebrus, which just requires you to watch Celebrus craft you the scepter. Our final quest, Seed of Life, can be picked up from Zatar's Spirit once you've completed the dungeon. This quest is quite simple and just requires us to head to Moonglade and turn the seed into Keeper Romulus. If you entered the dungeon through the orange side, the first boss we'll encounter is Noxian. Noxian is a fairly easy boss that deals nature damage with each hit. His first ability is Toxic Volley, launching a toxin at each member in your party and poisoning each player hit for minimal damage. His second ability is Uppercut, which does minimal damage and knocks you up. Face your back towards a wall as to avoid being knocked into enemies. At 50% health, Noxian will use his final ability, in which he becomes 5 smaller elementals. Do your best to focus them down, but their damage is negligible. Upon killing the final one, Noxian will return, allowing you to finish him off. Our second boss in the Orange Wing is Razorlash. Razorlash is a fairly simple tank and spank. He has a passive Wind Fury that will occasionally hit his target for 3 total hits. If you keep your tank healed up, this won't be something you'll really need to worry about. Face Razorlash away from the party as he'll also cleave. Lastly, Razorlash will apply a puncture, which does minor physical damage over 10 seconds. Overall, an incredibly easy boss, and probably the easiest of the dungeon. If you entered through the Purple Wing, the first boss you'll encounter is Lord Viletongue. He's flanked by 2 stealth satyrs, so focus them down first upon pulling. Occasionally Viletongue will smoke bomb, stunning everything in an area around him. This can only be avoided by keeping your distance, so if you're ranged, you're safe. Viletongue's next ability is a sort of combo. He will blink away from the tank and immediately multi-shot the party for minor damage in a cone in front of him. If you don't approach him, he'll continue to shoot. He'll occasionally repeat this combo, but otherwise that's it. While we're leaving the Purple Wing, make sure you check for our dungeon's only rare, Meshlock the Harvester, found patrolling the upper corrupted pools. Meshlock is an incredibly easy tank and spank. If you don't kill him quickly enough, he might War Stomp, stunning in an area around him. That's about all he does. At the end of the corrupted waterfalls, we encounter Celebrus the Cursed. Celebrus is surrounded by some treants. These can be area of affected down, and even if they move on to attack your allies, they don't do enough damage to be of real concern. Celebrus himself primarily casts the nature spell Wrath, and will occasionally cast Entangling Roots, which will snare you for a few seconds. Lastly, Celebrus will use Force of Nature, respawning his treants. Do your best to pick up the treants, but again, they aren't too big of a concern. Celebrus is incredibly easy and marks the end of the easier section of the dungeon. Past this point, your group should be on higher alert as things become much more difficult. As we proceed further into the cavern, we encounter a lone goblin engineer. Tinker Gizlock should not pose any issues to your group as long as your tank keeps him faced away and the healer is ready to spot heal. Gizlock's primary ability is his Goblin Dragon Gun, which will do a cone of fire damage in front of him for 8 seconds. Face this away from your group, otherwise it will melt everyone of Gizlock at low tier 2 per
I just remembered I should have been looking at the loot.
head through the boss that deals nature damage with each hit. His first ability is
wand.
Toxic Volley, launching a toxin at each
I can
member
use a
in
new
your party
wand.
and poisoning each player hit for minimal damage. His second ability is Uppercut, which does minimal damage and knocks you up. Face your back towards a wall as to avoid being knocked into enemies. At 50% health, Noxian will use his final ability, in which he becomes 5 smaller elementals. Do your best to focus them down, but their damage is negligible. Upon killing the final one, Noxian will return, allowing you to finish him off. Our second boss in the Orange Wing is Razorlash. Razorlash is a fairly simple tank and spank. He has a passive Wind Fury that will occasionally hit his target for 3 total hits. If you keep your tank healed up, this won't be something you'll really need to worry about.
I want to heal though. All of the captured baby dragons! We gotta rescue them, guys! Where's the bamboo cage key? We gotta save the dragons! Oh my god! Where do we get a bamboo cage key? Fuck. I'm not really gonna get this group together. Man, I'm so lazy. Yeah, okay. Let's invite this guy. No, I need to bamboo cage key. Yes, where do I get this? Tell me now. Hurry. Yes, who drops it, you stupid game? I need this bamboo cage key. Only Alliance can get the keys. Aww. $47 Warlock. RDPS. Yeah, I'll invite the Warlock. Yeah, but I don't want to fucking bring another. I need a tank. Is that the one I have? Lol. Never mind. Fucking uninvite. Hi. Invite. Eh. There we go. So I didn't want to do that group anymore. I don't want to commit 2 hours to a Marathon run.
Face Razorlash away from the party, as he'll also cleave. Lastly, Razorlash will apply a puncture, which does minor physical damage over 10 seconds. Overall, an incredibly easy boss, and probably the easiest of the dungeon. If you entered through the Purple Wing, the first boss you'll encounter is Lord Viletongue. Welcome to the Sunken Temple in-depth dungeon guide for both Horde and Alliance. In this video I'll be documenting how and where to collect and complete every quest, as well as bosses and their loot. This dungeon has quite a few puzzles, as well as mechanically challenging bosses, so we'll be going over that as well. The Temple of Atal Hakar, better known as the Sunken Temple, was once supposed to be the summoning site to the blood god Hakar by Jamalan the Prophet. When Ysera and the Green Dragonflight found out about this nefarious plot, they sunk the temple into the swamps, unbeknownst to them that Hakar would later be summoned in Zul'Gurub. The recommended level is 51 to 54, but you can enter as early as level 35. Any tank will do here, but warriors in particular excel.
51.
Shamans and Dwarf Priests for their Tremor Totem and Fear Ward respectively are also highly desirable, as you'll encounter plenty of fears here. Alternatively, try and bring someone with a reliable crowd control like a rogue, hunter, or mage to ease some of the larger pulls. Sunken Temple is one of the more worthwhile dungeons to complete on your way to 60. Most classes have pre-best in slot items here, as well as the dungeon offering fairly good experience gains. Just be prepared for a fairly time-consuming dungeon run. I'll have a full dungeon clear in the description, as well as appropriate timestamps in the comments. Let's start things off with our class quests. At level 50, every class will receive a quest from their respective trainers in every major city. In the interest of saving time, I've linked a handy guide on how to complete each one in the description. These quests typically require you to meet a class hero, kill some things for them, and then head into the Sunken Temple. I highly recommend doing this questline as it will typically reward an item in the
Hold
comments.
on.
Let's start things off with our class quests. At level 50, every class will
Oh.
receive a quest from their respective trainers in every major city. In the interest of saving time, I've linked a handy guide on how to complete each one in the description. These quests typically require you to meet a class hero, kill some things for them, and then head into the Sunken Temple. I highly recommend doing this questline as it will typically reward an item that you'll carry well into level 60.
Hey there. See you around.
As of patch 1.12, Alliance only has one quest chain pertaining to the Sunken Temple. Starting off with In Search of the Temple from Brohan Caspellian Stormwind, which requires you to head to the Sunken Temple in the Swamp of Sorrows. Once you approach it, you'll be awarded completion credit and can return to Brohan, who will then give you To the Hinterlands. This quest sends you to Falstad up in the airy peak of the Hinterlands. Falstad will then send you to Griffin Master Talanax, who's just in the building above. Talanax will send you to Rhapsody Shindigger to the east, who will give you Rhapsody's Kalimdor cocktail. This quest requires you to travel across the world to Tenaris to collect 3 gizzards from any of the rocks shown here, and then to Feralis to collect Ironfur liver found here, and Gordok liver found here. Upon returning to Rhapsody, he will give you Rhapsody's tail, which will just send you back to Brohan. Finally, Brohan will give you Into the Temple of Atal Hakar, which requires you to collect 10 Atalai tablets found anywhere inside and around the Sunken Temple. This quest is pretty time consuming, so if you're looking for maximum experience per hour gain, I would recommend skipping all but the first part.
What do you need? Straight.
Our first of 2 Horde quests begins in the Swamp of Sorrows from Fezrel and Stoneheart. Fezrel will give you Pool of Tears, which simply requires us to collect the artifacts in the lake surrounding the temple. Upon returning to Fezrel, he will give us the Atalai Exile, sending us to the Hinterlands to speak with the Exile. The Exile has a neutral quest we can pick up, which I'll discuss later in the video. After delivering him the bundle of artifacts, we are sent back to Fezrel. Finally, Fezrel will give us Into the Temple of Atal Hakar, requiring us to collect 20 fetishes of Hakar from any of the trolls found within the dungeon. Our other Horde quest begins in Ungoro Crater from a dwarf named Larian. Larian really hates lashers, so he sends us to kill 5 of 4 different varieties of lashers found in the crater. After doing so, he realizes his friend is creating them to pester him, so he sends you to Ratchet with the quest Marvin's Workshop to create a lasher zapper. Upon arriving to Marvin's Workshop in Ratchet, we meet with Liz Rizzleflex, who will give us Zapper. All but the first part.
What do you need? Straight.
Our first of 2 Horde quests begins in the Swamp of Sorrows from Fezrel and Stoneheart. Fezrel will give you Pool of Tears, which simply requires us to collect the artifacts in the lake surrounding the temple. Upon returning to Fezrel, he will give us the Atalai Exile, sending us to the Hinterlands to speak with the Exile. The Exile has a neutral quest we can pick up, which I'll discuss later in the video. After delivering him the bundle of artifacts, we are sent back to Fezrel. Finally, Fezrel will give us Into the Temple of Atal Hakar, requiring us to collect 20 fetishes of Hakar from any of the trolls found within the dungeon. Our other Horde quest begins in Ungoro Crater from a dwarf named Larian. Larian really hates lashers, so he sends us to kill 5 of 4 different varieties of lashers found in the crater. After doing so, he realizes his friend is creating them to pester him, so he sends you to Ratchet with the quest Marvin's Workshop to create a lasher zapper. Welcome to the Zul'Farrak in-depth dungeon guide for both Horde and Alliance. Zul'Farrak is an ancient troll city inhabited by the Sand Fury trolls. The entrance can be found in the northwestern corner of Tenaris and is very easily accessed, as there are not too many elites guarding it. Zul'Farrak is an excellent dungeon to acquire some awesome items, and for most players it will be where they acquire their first trinket, the fabled carrot on a stick, as well as their first epic, if they're lucky enough, that being Soldrace the Lasher. This dungeon has many puzzles, and even a secret boss, thus this guide will give you an overview on how to have a clean run. Just be careful, as the mobs in this dungeon are much more difficult than previously encountered, and will require crowd control as well as quite a bit of area of effect damage. The ideal level range is 43 to 47, but you can enter as early as level 35. Just a quick disclaimer, the server that this was recorded on has the dungeon very poorly scripted, thus I will explain the fights how they were originally meant to be as opposed to what's on screen.
Always gang.
Our first, and only horde quest, starts off from some hidden venom bottles in the troll city Hiriwatha in western hinterlands. These bottles send us to Apothecary Leiden in Terran Mill. Leiden will give us the follow-up, Undamaged Venom Sac, which will require a venom sac from any of the spiders in Shadra Allure back in the hinterlands. This quest item has a very low drop chance, so be patient. Upon returning to Leiden, we will receive Consult Master Gadrin. This quest sends us to Master Gadrin in Senjin Village in Duratar. Upon reaching Gadrin, he will give us the Spider God. This quest just requires us to read through a large stone tablet found in the eastern part of Zul'Farrak. Our first, and only Alliance quest, starts off from Griffin Master Talanax. Talanax can be found at the Airy Peak in Hinterlands and gives us the quest Witherbark Cages, which requires us to investigate 3 various cages in the troll villages of the central Hinterlands. They can be found in each of the circles on this map. Upon returning to Talanax, we are given the Altar of Zul'Farrak. This quest just requires us to explore the Altar of Zul'Farrak. Be aware that there are elites up at the altar, so you will either need a group or a mount to outrun them. Finally, Talanax will give us the quest Thaddeus Grimshade, who sends us to Thaddeus Grimshade down in the Blasted Lands. When we finally arrive, we head to Netherguard Keep and go to the top of the tower where we can find Thaddeus. Thaddeus will give us Necrum's Medallion, which will require us to collect a medallion from Necrum Gutchewer, one of the mini-bosses within Zul'Farrak. Our first neutral quest starts at the Mirage Raceway from Wizzle Brassbolts. Wizzle gives us Gazrilla, which requires us to kill the secret boss Gazrilla and collect his electrified scale. This quest gives us the fabled Carrot on the Stick, which increases mounted movement speed by a whopping 3%. I'll explain how to summon Gazrilla later in the video. Tabitha's task can be started in every major city aside from Darnassus, and can be picked up in each map's marked area respectively. This quest sends us to Tabitha in the central area of Duskwallow Marsh. Upon arriving to Tabitha, she gives us Tiara of the Deep, which just requires us to collect the Tiara of the Deep from Hydromancer Velthena in Zul'Farrak. In Booty Bay, we can pick up Tranrek from Krazek, which just sends us to Tranrek in Gadgetzin. Tranrek then gives us the follow-up Scarab Shells. This quest just requires us to collect 5 uncracked Scarab Shells from any of the non-elite Scarabs inside of Zul'Farrak. While we're in Gadgetzin, we can also pick up Divinomatic Rod from Chief Engineer Bilgewizzle. Bilgewizzle wants us to collect the Divinomatic Rod from Sergeant Bly, who can be found at the base of the Sacrificial Pyramid after the Gauntlet event. Our last quest that's found in Gadgetzin is Troll Temper from Trenton Lighthand.
He died!
Collect 20 Troll Tempers, dropped by any of the trolls within Zul'Farrak. Our final quest starts from Yakinya at the Steamweedle Port. Yakinya gives us Screecher Spirits, which sends us to Fairless to kill and collect 3 spirits from any of the Veil Screechers found within Central Fairless. Upon returning to Yakinya, he gives us the Prophecy of Mosharu, which asks us to collect the first Mosharu tablet from a named mob, Theka the Martyr, and the second tablet of Mosharu from Hydromancer Velthana. I would recommend continuing this quest chain afterwards, as it leads to a very rewarding dungeon quest within the Sunken Temple. Now, to summon Gazrilla, the secret boss, we must first start off by killing Kiaga the Keeper at the top of the Altar of Zul in the Hinterlands. You will need a fairly strong group for this. She is a level 50 elite and is accompanied by another level 50 elite, as well as some adds. Upon killing Kiaga, loot her for a sacred mallet. Now that you have the mallet, you can head to the top of Jinta Allure. At the very top, at the sacrificial altar, we can use the sacred mallet to forge it into the mallet of Zul'Farrak. You need at least a 5-man group to do this, as the mobs here can, at times, be more difficult than what you fight in Zul'Farrak. You can also attempt to outrun your entire way up, but be prepared to die. A lot. Our first boss is Antisul. As mentioned earlier, this is one of the fights that is incorrectly scripted. Once you reach the entrance of his cave,
Hey, I can't 1v2.
Antisul will proceed to summon a large group of basilisks. These should be killed off as quickly as possible, otherwise they'll make quick work of any squishy class. Antisol will also summon an elite Basilisk, which needs to be taunted immediately and focused down, as it does quite a bit of damage. While this is going on, be on the lookout for totems that Antisol summons. He can summon an Earth Grab totem and a Healing totem, which should both be removed as quickly as possible to avoid their effects. Lastly, Antisol casts a heal. Interrupt this if possible, as it heals for quite a bit. If you can muster all of that, you'll be awarded with some excellent items, and if you're lucky, one of the swords used to craft Salt Rays will drop. Before we start our next boss, Witch Doctor Zumra, we must clear out all of the graves in his boss area. If you don't, he will summon elites that will eventually overwhelm you during the boss fight. Once you're ready, approach Zumra. When you get to his chest, he will become hostile. Zumra himself is fairly easy. He casts Shadow Bolt and
Oh
Shadow
man,
Bolt
you
volley,
can't give up
which
like
don't do enough
that.
damage to really be worried about. But he does heal, so save your interrupt for that. Finally, Zumra drops a totem that summons skeletons. Kill this
Fuck.
quickly as to minimize damage to your group. Before we can start our third boss, we must first head to the top of the sacrificial pyramid, kill the executioner, and free the group of Alliance and Horde at the top. Be warned that this will begin a gauntlet that summons 3 waves of trolls that will immediately run up the pyramid to fight you. Keep the prisoners you freed alive, or you will not be able to complete the rest of the dungeon. The third wave will summon Shadow Priest Aziz. The big difficulty with Aziz is that you must fight him, his assistant Necrom, and some additional adds, but you will have the assistance of the prisoners you freed. Necrom himself will cast Shadow Bolts, which can be ignored. He will occasionally fear in an area, but this is unavoidable. If you have a class with access to a short cooldown interrupt, have them sit on Aziz, as he will heal his minions, which will make the fight all the harder. Past all this fight is probably the easiest in the dungeon due to the prisoners assisting you. Our next boss, and technically our last boss, is Chief Ukar's Sandscalp and his assistant Ruzlu. To have the easiest time with this boss, I'd recommend an off-tank take Ruzlu while your group focuses him down, and the main tank hold Sandscalp to the side while this happens. Both Sandscalp and Ruzlu cleave, so keep them faced away from the group. While Ruzlu is fairly easy, make sure the person tanking him doesn't get too low as he can execute. Sandscalp himself will occasionally enrage, increasing his damage and attack speed by quite a bit. Pop a defensive when this happens, or he will burst you down. If you can keep up with the damage, this should be a relatively easy kill. Sandscalp drops the second part of the sword used to
I was not paying attention at all there. I was too engorged in the game. Thick energy. I just want my chicken back. Christ, what are you doing? I meant the Alliance. I think a warlock's my new best friend. Our classes have good synergy. You should be resin by now. tried to heal you. Fuck. Alright, they can't camp us both. Two-minute death timer. That is so not the right thing to do. No one's listening anyways. Man, they got a rogue. So I'm thinking we're getting improved vampiric embrace. For all that juicy, juicy healing. Yeah, that's sounding me. That's low. That's elite pro typing.
Carlson, tonight, Beto O'Rourke, we are set to tell you has changed. He's not the boyish, carefree road tripper with the primo weed hookup you might remember from just a few months ago. That Beto is gone, maybe forever. The new Beto is far more serious, even angry. What's the new Beto mad about? Well, climate change, obviously, and border walls, and bigotry, and uptight old people who don't understand that skateboarding is not a crime. Also, that buzzkill Pete Buttigieg, or whatever his name is, who snuck up and stole his spot in the presidential rankings. That was annoying as hell. But mostly what Beto is mad at is Beto. Beto's had some free time recently, being unemployed, so he looked inside and came to the conclusion that actually he's a pretty mediocre person, not a good guy at all, pretty much an awful human being. Most people would keep that knowledge to themselves. Not Beto. He went on The View today to tell everyone.
You did a Vanity Fair cover to announce your campaign, and you said you were, quote, born to be in it. You went across the country alone on a road trip after you lost your election, and you said you, quote, sometimes help raise your kids. These are things in my mind that a female candidate wouldn't be able to get away with. Do you think you can get away with more because you're a man? And do you have any regrets about launching on the cover of Vanity Fair?
You're right. There are things that I have been privileged to do in my life that others cannot.
You're right, said Beto. Male privilege is real. I should know. All those cool, fun things I've done in my life, I only did them because I'm a man. And I feel bad about that. So bad that I've had a committee of diversity consultants draft an awkwardly written statement of moral culpability, which I will now read to you with feigned sincerity in the hope that it's sufficient atonement for my sins. Here we go.
The systematic foundational discrimination that we have in this country in every aspect of life is something that I have not experienced in my lifetime. And I've had advantages that others could not enjoy.
Yeah, so that clears that up. In case you thought that Beto might be suffering from systematic foundational discrimination in every aspect of his life, now you know the truth. He's not. And he's deeply ashamed of that, because it's morally superior to be discriminated against, as the rich and pampered ladies of The View, who are also somehow victims, can and will tell you. But whatever, Beto can't help it if people don't hate him for who he is. That's the downside of privilege. People like you too much. All Beto can do is try harder to be despised as much as he despises himself, which he has pledged to do.
I have my work cut out for me to be a better person and ensure that I'm more mindful to the experiences that others have had, different than the experiences that I've had.
You regret the Vanity Fair cover.
Are those mistakes? Would you say those are mistakes? Being on the cover of Vanity Fair?
Yeah, so Megan.
It looks elitist? What? What's
Yeah, I think it reinforces that perception of privilege. And that headline that said I was born to be in this, in the article was attempting to say that I felt that my calling was in public service. No one is born to be president of the United States of America, least of all me.
What about the part-time dad thing?
Yeah, so listen.
Got some flack for that one.
Absolutely, and I deserved it.
I deserved it. Just so we're clear on this, the lady who makes millions talking about herself on a TV show every day disapproves of Beto appearing on a magazine cover because it's, quote, elitist. And Beto fervently agrees with her. Of course he does. There is no criticism of Beto that Beto does not agree with. Back in March, he apologized profusely for saying that his wife had raised their 3 kids. Do you even know how patriarchal that sounds? Beto does. And he's really, truly, sincerely sorry he said it.
Not only will I not say that again, but I'll be much more thoughtful going forward in the way that I talk about our marriage, and also the way in which I acknowledge the truth of the criticism that I have enjoyed white privilege.
I have enjoyed white privilege. There you go. He acknowledged it. Thank you, Mr. O'Rourke, for your candor. But the real question is, how much did you enjoy white privilege? We'll get to those details in our next round of questioning. But in the meantime, we don't want to give you the impression that Beto is the only one groveling here. Far from it. They all are. For Democrats in 2019, to run is to grovel. Here's Mayor Pete of South Bend remembering with sadness and horror the one time years ago when he suggested that all human life had value. How could he have been so stupid and cruel?
2015, you said that all lives matter when you spoke about 2 police controversies that were happening in South Bend. Was that a mistake?
What I did not understand at that time was that that phrase, just early into mid, especially 2015, was coming to be viewed as a sort of counter slogan to Black Lives Matter. And so this statement that seems very anodyne and something that's kind of nobody could be against actually wound up being used to devalue what the Black Lives Matter movement was telling us. Since learning about how that phrase was being used to push back on that activism, I've stopped using it in that context.
Yeah, how could I have been so stupid? And here's Senator Kirsten Gillibrand of New York calling in artillery on her own position after an NBC researcher discovered that she had once supported national borders. Seriously.
You essentially said that you were embarrassed about your previous position on immigration. Tell me about that.
Well, I don't think it was driven from my heart.
Oh,
I was
God,
depressed to
not
the suffering
again.
of families who want to be with their loved ones, people who want to be reunited with their families. And I recognize, as we all do, that immigration and diversity is our strength as a country. I really regretted that I didn't look beyond my district and talk about why this is an important part of the United States story.
I was callous. I was heartless. Don't hate me. I hate myself enough. Well, thank you for sharing, Kirsten. Good luck with your self-esteem issues. Joe Biden is a good quarter century older than Senator Gillibrand, who herself is older than a lot of the Democratic candidates. So you'd think Biden would be old enough he would have earned the right not to say he's sorry, but think again. Age is now itself something to apologize for, and Biden did. Biden grew up at a time before human warmth was reclassified as a criminal act, and he's very, very sorry for that.
The social norms have begun to change, they've shifted, and the boundaries of protecting personal space have been reset. And I get it. I get it. I hear what they're saying. I will be more mindful and respectful of people's personal space.
We could go on with the orgy of apology. Kamala Harris apologizing for putting criminals in jail. Bernie Sanders apologizing for how women were treated on his last campaign, even as he denied they were mistreated. Amy Klobuchar apologizing for once wanting pizza in school lunches, etc. Tomorrow, all of them will be apologizing for something new. In a world without forgiveness, this is a cycle that continues forever. No self-abasement is ever enough. The left has become a kind of rolling inquisition with a bottomless appetite for ritual punishment and humiliation. Tell us you've been naughty. Thank you, sir. May I have another? This is sick. These people have no dignity. They have no self-respect. There is nothing they won't say, nothing they won't admit to, whether it's true or not. They despise themselves. Be careful of people like that. They're likely to feel the same way about you. Tammy Bruce is a radio host and president of the Independent Women's Forum, and she joins us tonight for an analysis of what exactly is going on here. So I don't remember this from 4 or 8 or 12 or 16 years ago, Democratic candidates making a ritual apology every time they get to the stump or do an interview. What has changed?
You know, it's fascinating because it's one thing to apologize if you've hurt someone's feelings. But we have now been watching these individuals debase themselves for being themselves. They're begging for forgiveness for existing. And I think that this is a side effect, if you will, of the entire Democratic foundation and policy ideas, which are based in this notion that humanity itself is a problem. And you can go back to climate change, that the climate is being destroyed because of our activity. You can just look at the nature of the Obama terms, bowing, apologizing for America around the world, that we were the source of all the problems, and that we were effectively the main issue and the main problem. So you've got this history of for the last decade or so, and we saw hints of it, like with political correctness. The inference there is that even what we think or what we might naturally want to say is automatically racist, sexist, and homophobic. So the general premise for the Democrats in almost everything they're doing, Democratic leadership and what they tell the American people, is that Americans in particular are a problem, humanity is awful, that we are the cause of everything that's wrong on Earth and in our personal lives. How could it not then move into what we've seen the left do before, the Cultural Revolution in China, where people experience that same kind of attack, the nature of having to condemn yourself. I can't wait for the Democratic debates, Tucker, to where maybe they'll all be in stockades, and then they'll have to be talking with their head in that clapper thing.
Well, that's it.
It is
a kind of.
Wait.
Well, it is a kind of weird sadomasochism. I mean, if we're being blunt about it, it is. It's creepy as hell.
Yeah.
I wonder, do voters want this from a leader? Do you want a leader who hates himself, who abases himself, who has no dignity or self-respect? Who wants that?
That's what I was thinking when I was watching this clip of Mr. O'Rourke on The View. Leadership takes confidence.
Bruce, great to see you.
People, the monster has arrived home and is unloading on the monster creators.
It's totally right. They're all Mike Dukakis now.
Yeah.
Tammy Bruce, great to see you tonight.
Nothing going on here. Don't look at me. I'm not watching anything. There's nobody. I'm not just grinding. I wasn't just getting camped.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Well, if you're doing well in the Democratic presidential race, you need to apologize for your privilege, obviously. If you're doing badly, you still must apologize, but you also make excuses for how you are the victim here. Nobody has played this role more precisely than Senator Kirsten Gillibrand. When she launched her campaign, her victim card was that she was a, quote, young mom. Watch.
I'm going to run for President of the United States because as a young mom, I'm going to fight for other people's kids as hard as I would fight for my own.
Didn't work. Gillibrand is now polling lower than pretty much anybody running for any office in America. So naturally, she just whined to CNN that voters are bigoted against, quote, young women. Now, not to be mean, but Gillibrand's older than I am. She's 52 years old. Barack Obama was younger than she was the night he beat Mitt Romney. It doesn't matter, though. The quest for victimhood trumps everything, including fact. Molly Hemingway knows that well. She's a senior editor at The Federalist, and she joins us tonight. Molly, thanks a lot for coming on. Is there any market on the Democratic side for someone who says, I am who I am, and if you don't like it, there's nothing I can do about it, and who just sort of straightforwardly presents a program without whining, without apologizing, without being a victim?
Can I just first say, what you just showed was amazing, and I think it shows what the problem is, that the media are so much in alliance with the Democratic Party that sometimes people aren't told when they say things that make them seem ridiculous. I think someone needs to sit Gam down and let her know she lost the 2016 election fair and square to Donald Trump. Someone needs to explain to Stacey Abrams that she is not the governor of Georgia, and someone needs to explain to Kirsten Gillibrand there's nothing wrong with being 52 at all. I hope I have a good time when I'm issue. You're either going to
The noble humans of Stormwind are a proud, tenacious race. Though the recent invasion of the demonic Burning Legion decimated their sister kingdom of Lordaeron, the defenders of Stormwind stand vigilant against any who would threaten the sanctity of their lands. Nestled in the foothills of Elwyn Forest, Stormwind City is one of the last bastions of human power in the world. Ruled by the Child King Anduin Wrynn, the people of Stormwind remain steadfast in their commitment to the Grand Alliance. Backed by their stalwart allies, the armies of Stormwind have been called away to fight the savage horde on distant battlefields. With the armies gone, the defense of Stormwind now falls to its proud citizens. You must defend the kingdom against the foul mongrels that encroach upon it, and hunt down the subversive traitors who seek to destroy it from within. Now is the time for heroes. Now humanity's greatest chapter can be told.
What can I do for you? You need something? Have a good one.
Greetings. Go with honor, friend.
How are you? See you around.